The autumn rain pelted against the windows of Mercy General Hospital's hospice wing, creating a rhythmic symphony that seemed to echo the steady beeping of medical equipment throughout the corridors. In room 247, Margaret Rose Thompson lay propped against pillows, her weathered hands folded over a faded photograph of a young couple dancing. At 92, her body had grown frail, but her eyes still sparkled with the same brightness that had captivated her husband William 70 years ago. "Tell me about Grandpa again, Grandma Rose," whispered Sarah Mitchell, Rose's 28-year-old granddaughter, pulling her chair closer to the hospital bed. Sarah had taken leave from her job as a marketing coordinator in downtown Nashville to spend these precious final weeks with her grandmother. Rose's lips curved into a gentle smile as she traced the edges of the photograph with her trembling finger. "Your grandfather was the most handsome man at the county fair that night in 1953, she began, her voice carrying the weight of decades but still melodic. "I was just 22, wearing my best yellow dress, and he walked right up to me while Garth Brooks was playing on the radio at the dance tent." Sarah leaned in closer, having heard this story countless times but never tiring of it. "Not Garth Brooks, Grandma. He wasn't around in 1953. It was probably Hank Williams or someone from that era." Rose chuckled softly, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Oh, honey, you're right. My old mind gets confused sometimes. But you know what? It should have been Garth Brooks. That man's voice. It reminds me so much of those early days with your grandfather. Every time I hear The Dance, I'm transported back to that magical night." The mention of the song brought tears to Sarah's eyes. She remembered how her grandmother would play it constantly after Grandfather William passed away 5 years ago. Rose would sit in her rocking chair on the front porch of her small house in Franklin, Tennessee, playing the song on repeat, sometimes humming along, sometimes just listening with her eyes closed, as if she could still feel William's arms around her. "I have a confession, Sarah," Rose said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. The afternoon light filtering through the hospital blinds cast gentle patterns across her lined face. "I know my time is short, and there's something I've always dreamed of doing, but never had the courage to pursue." Sarah straightened in her chair, giving her grandmother her complete attention. "What is it, Grandma? You know I'll do anything for you." Rose's eyes grew distant, as if she were looking beyond the sterile hospital walls toward something only she could see. "I've always wanted to meet Garth Brooks. Not just meet him, but sing The Dance with him. I know it sounds foolish for an old woman like me, but that song, it's been the soundtrack to my entire adult life. William and I danced to it at our 25th anniversary, our 40th, even on his last birthday before the cancer took him." The room fell silent except for the gentle hum of the heating system and the distant sounds of hospital life in the corridors. Sarah felt her heart breaking and swelling simultaneously. Her grandmother had never asked for much in life. She'd worked as a seamstress for 40 years, raised 4 children, helped raise 12 grandchildren, and had always been the pillar of strength for the entire Thompson family. "Grandma, that's not foolish at all," Sarah said, reaching over to take her grandmother's hand. The skin was paper-thin and cool, but Rose's grip was surprisingly strong. "It's beautiful. And you know what? We're going to make it happen." Rose laughed, a sound tinged with both hope and disbelief. "Oh, sweetheart, I appreciate your optimism, but Garth Brooks is a superstar. He doesn't have time for silly old ladies in hospital beds. Besides, I probably wouldn't even remember all the words if I tried to sing with him." "Are you kidding me?" Sarah exclaimed, her voice filled with affection and determination. "You know every single word to every Garth Brooks song ever recorded. You've been my personal jukebox my entire life. And as for him being too busy, well, We'll never know unless we try. That evening, after Rose had fallen asleep to the soft sounds of a country music station playing quietly on the bedside radio, Sarah sat in the hospital cafeteria with her laptop, trying to formulate a plan. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the coffee in her cup had long since grown cold, but her mind was racing with possibilities. She started by researching Garth Brooks' management company, his official website, and his social media presence. The man was indeed a superstar, with millions of fans worldwide and a schedule that was probably booked solid for months or years in advance. But Sarah had learned from her grandmother that love and determination could move mountains, and she wasn't about to give up without exhausting every possible avenue. As she typed on her laptop, other families in the cafeteria shared quiet conversations about their own loved ones upstairs. The hospital at night had a different energy, more subdued, more reflective. Sarah noticed an elderly man sitting alone at a corner table, staring at a cup of tea that had probably been cooling for an hour. She recognized him as Robert Henderson, whose wife was also in the hospice wing. "Excuse me," Sarah said, approaching his table. "I'm Sarah Mitchell. My grandmother is in room 247. Would you mind if I joined you for a moment?" Robert looked up with kind but tired eyes. "Of course, dear. I'm Robert. My wife Elizabeth is in 251. How is your grandmother doing?" "As well as can be expected," Sarah replied, settling into the plastic chair across from him. "Actually, I was hoping to get some advice. My grandmother has this dream, and I'm trying to figure out how to make it come true." Over the next hour, Sarah found herself sharing Rose's story with Robert, who listened with the patient attention of someone who understood the preciousness of final wishes. When she finished, Robert was quiet for a long moment, then smiled. The first genuine smile Sarah had seen from him. "You know," Robert said, "my Elizabeth has been talking about wanting to hear live music one more time. She used to be a piano teacher, and music has always been her greatest love. Maybe there's a way to help both of our ladies." That night, Sarah returned to Rose's room to find her grandmother awake, looking out the window at the Nashville skyline twinkling in the distance. The city that had launched 1,000 country music careers seemed to pulse with possibility, even in the quiet hours before dawn. "Couldn't sleep either?" Rose asked without turning from the window. "Too much thinking," Sarah admitted, settling back into the chair that had become her second home. "Grandma, I want you to know that I'm serious about making your dream come true. I don't know how yet, but I promise you, I'm going to find a way." Rose turned to look at her granddaughter, and in the dim light from the hallway, Sarah could see tears glistening in the older woman's eyes. "Sarah, honey, just having you here with me is more than I could have asked for. But if you really want to try, well, I suppose there's no harm in dreaming big." "That's exactly what we're going to do," Sarah said, reaching for her grandmother's hand again. "We're going to dream big, and then we're going to make those dreams come true." Outside the hospital window, Nashville slept, unaware that in room 247, a granddaughter was plotting to move heaven and earth for the woman who had taught her that love was the most powerful force in the universe. The rain had stopped, and a few stars were visible through the breaking clouds. A sign, perhaps, that even the darkest nights eventually give way to light. As Rose drifted back to sleep, Sarah quietly opened her laptop and began typing a message that would change everything. "My 92-year-old grandmother is in hospice care, and her last wish is to sing with Garth Brooks. This is her story." The soft chime of Sarah's phone at 6:30 a.m. jolted her awake in the reclining chair beside Rose's bed. She had fallen asleep while writing social media posts, her laptop balanced precariously on her knees. Rose was still sleeping peacefully, her breathing steady and rhythmic, a small mercy in these difficult days. Sarah's phone showed 17 missed calls from her mother, Jennifer Mitchell, Rose's daughter. With a sinking feeling, she quietly stepped into the hallway to return the call. "Sarah!" "Thank God." Jennifer's voice crackled through the phone. She was calling from Phoenix, where she lived with Sarah's stepfather. "I've been trying to reach you for hours. How's Mom doing?" "She's stable, Mom. The doctors say it could be days or weeks, but she's comfortable and alert most of the time." Sarah rubbed her eyes, trying to shake off the grogginess. "Actually, there's something I need to tell you about." As Sarah explained Rose's wish and her plan to somehow connect with Garth Brooks, she could hear her mother's skepticism growing with each word. "Honey, I understand you want to help Grandma, but you need to be realistic," Jennifer said gently. "Garth Brooks performs for thousands of people. He's not going to drop everything for one elderly fan, no matter how sweet the story is." "Mom, with respect, that's exactly the attitude that keeps miracles from happening," Sarah replied, her voice firm but loving. "Grandma has spent her entire life putting everyone else's needs before her own. For once, I want to try to give her something she's always wanted." After ending the call with her mother, Sarah returned to Rose's room to find her grandmother awake and humming softly. The morning light streaming through the windows made Rose's silver hair look almost ethereal. "Good morning, sunshine," Rose said with a warm smile. "You were very busy on that computer last night. What were you working on so intently?" Sarah pulled her chair closer and opened her laptop. "I was writing about you, Grandma. About your story, your dream, and your love for music. I posted it on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter last night before I fell asleep." Rose's eyebrows raised with curiosity and a hint of concern. "What exactly did you write about me, dear?" Sarah turned the laptop screen toward her grandmother and began reading the post she had crafted in the early morning hours. "My grandmother, Margaret Rose Thompson, is 92 years old and currently in hospice care here in Nashville. She has lived an incredible life, raised 4 children, worked for 40 years as a seamstress, and has been the heart of our family for as long as I can remember. But more than anything, she has loved music, especially the songs of Garth Brooks. Rose and my grandfather, William, danced to the dance on their first date in 1953. Okay, it wasn't actually Garth Brooks playing that night, but Grandma likes to remember it that way. They danced to it at their wedding, their anniversaries, and even during Grandpa's last days 5 years ago. Now, as Rose faces her final chapter, she has one last wish: to meet Garth Brooks and sing The Dance with him. I know this might seem impossible. I know Garth Brooks is incredibly busy and has millions of fans. But I also know that my grandmother represents something beautiful in this world. A generation that understood the power of love, commitment, and the way music can carry us through life's greatest joys and sorrows. If anyone knows how to reach Garth Brooks or his team, please share this post. If you've ever had a grandparent who meant the world to you, please share this post. Sometimes the most beautiful miracles happen when we simply have the courage to ask. Last wish. Sir Garth Brooks, Chachun Nashville. The dance. Love. Her family. Rose listened intently, her eyes filling with tears. When Sarah finished reading, she was quiet for a long moment. "Oh, Sarah," she finally whispered. "That's beautiful, but I'm embarrassed to think of strangers reading about me." "Grandma, there's nothing embarrassing about a life filled with love," Sarah assured her. "Let me check if anyone has seen it yet." Sarah refreshed her social media feeds and gasped. In the 6 hours since she had posted, the Facebook post had been shared 847 times and had over 200 comments. The Instagram post had 200 likes, and the Twitter version had been retweeted 340 times. "Grandma, look at this," Sarah said, showing Rose the screen. "People are already responding." Together, they began reading through the comments. There were messages from strangers across the country, sharing their own stories about grandparents, about the power of music, about last wishes fulfilled and unfulfilled. There were people tagging local Nashville news stations, country music radio hosts, and anyone they could think of who might have a connection to Garth Brooks. One comment particularly caught their attention. It was from a woman named Patricia Williams in Oklahoma. My mother had a similar wish before she passed last year. We never got to fulfill it, but seeing your grandmother's story gives me hope that some dreams really can come true. I've shared this with my friend who works at a Nashville radio station, praying for your sweet Rose. Dr. Michael Peterson, Rose's primary physician, knocked softly on the doorframe before entering. He was a kind man in his 50s who had been treating hospice patients for over 20 years. His gentle demeanor and honest communication had made him a favorite among the families on the ward. "Good morning, Rose. How are you feeling today?" Dr. Peterson asked, checking her chart and the monitors beside her bed. "Better than I have in weeks, actually," Rose replied with genuine brightness in her voice. "My granddaughter here is trying to work a miracle." Dr. Peterson looked at Sarah with curiosity, and she briefly explained the social media campaign. His reaction surprised them both. "You know," Dr. Peterson said thoughtfully, "I've been working with hospice patients for a long time, and I've learned that sometimes the most powerful medicine isn't something we can prescribe. Hope, purpose, excitement about something special. These things can have a remarkable effect on a person's overall well-being." He sat down in the chair across from Sarah, his stethoscope draped around his neck like a badge of his profession. "Rose, regardless of whether you get to meet Garth Brooks, the fact that you have something to look forward to, something that brings you joy to even think about, that's incredibly valuable." As Dr. Peterson left to continue his rounds, Sarah's phone began buzzing with notifications. The posts were gaining momentum faster than she had ever imagined possible. "Look at this, Grandma," Sarah said excitedly. "WKDF, the country music station, just shared our post on their Facebook page. And someone tagged the Grand Ole Opry." Rose shook her head in amazement. "In my day, if you wanted to get a message to someone famous, you had to write a letter and hope it reached them. This internet business is like magic." By noon, Sarah's phone was buzzing almost constantly. The story had caught the attention of several Nashville-based bloggers and country music fan sites. Local news station WSMV had called the hospital, asking for permission to interview Rose. The Nashville Scene, a local entertainment weekly, wanted to write a feature story. "This is getting bigger than I expected," Sarah admitted to her grandmother. "Are you okay with all this attention?" Rose was quiet for a moment, looking out the window toward downtown Nashville. "You know, Sarah, I've spent most of my life trying to blend in, trying not to cause any fuss. But maybe, just maybe, that was wrong. Maybe sometimes we need to be willing to stand up and ask for what we want, not just for ourselves, but for all the people who are too afraid to ask." That afternoon, Robert Henderson knocked on their door. He was holding a small bouquet of flowers and had a slightly embarrassed but hopeful expression on his face. "I hope I'm not intruding," Robert said. "I wanted to bring these for Rose, and I also wanted to ask, would you mind if I shared your story with my daughter in California? She works in the entertainment industry, nothing as big as Garth Brooks, but she might know someone who knows someone." Rose gestured for Robert to come in and take a seat. "Of course, Robert. And how is Elizabeth today?" "She's having a good day," Robert replied, settling into the extra chair that the nursing staff had brought in earlier. "Actually, that's part of why I wanted to talk to you both. Elizabeth heard about your Garth Brooks wish from one of the nurses, and she had an idea." Robert leaned forward, his eyes lighting up with the first real enthusiasm Sarah had seen from him. Elizabeth was a music teacher for 35 years. She taught piano, directed church choirs, and even organized community concerts. She said that even if Garth Brooks can't come here, maybe there's a way to bring music to the hospice ward. Maybe other local musicians would be willing to perform. Create something special for all the patients and families. Sarah felt her heart swell with the possibility. That's a beautiful idea, Robert. Even if we can't make the Garth Brooks dream come true, maybe we can create something wonderful for everyone here. Rose reached over and patted Robert's hand. You tell Elizabeth that she's a wise woman. Sometimes the dreams we think we want lead us to the dreams we didn't know we needed. As the afternoon wore on, Sarah fielded calls from more reporters, responded to hundreds of social media messages, and watched in amazement as the story continued to spread. Someone had created a hashtag, Garth Rose's Last Dance, and it was beginning to trend in Nashville. But the real magic wasn't happening online. It was happening in room 247, where Rose seemed more alive and energetic than she had in weeks. She was sitting up straighter, talking more, and even asked for a little makeup so she would look presentable for all these people who might be watching. You know what, Sarah? Rose said as the sun began to set over Nashville. Regardless of what happens with Garth Brooks, you've already given me something incredible. You've reminded me that my life, my story, my love for your grandfather, all of it matters. That's worth more than I can express. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Grandma, your life has always mattered. Every person you've touched, every kindness you've shown, every song you've hummed while working in your garden, it all matters. As night fell over Nashville, neither Sarah nor Rose could have imagined that 500 miles away in Oklahoma, Garth Brooks was scrolling through his Twitter feed and had just discovered a hashtag that would change everything. Rose's Last Dance. The stage was set for something beautiful. The morning of October 15th arrived with an unseasonable warmth that made the autumn leaves outside Mercy General Hospital glow like stained glass in the early sunlight. Sarah woke to find Rose already awake, sitting up in bed and looking more alert than she had in days. Something feels different today, Rose said, her voice carrying a strength that had been absent for weeks. I can't explain it, but I feel like something wonderful is about to happen. Sarah stretched and reached for her phone to check the overnight activity on their posts. What she saw made her gasp so loudly that Rose turned to look at her with concern. What is it, dear? You look like you've seen a ghost. Grandma, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. We have over 50,000 shares now. The story is on the front page of the Nashville Scene website. And, she paused, hardly believing what she was reading. Someone from Garth Brooks's management team sent me a direct message. Rose's hands flew to her chest. What does it say? Sarah's fingers trembled as she opened the message. Hi, Sarah. I'm Amanda Rodriguez, assistant to Garth Brooks' management team. We've seen Rose's story, and Mr. Brooks would like to speak with you. Please call me at your earliest convenience. This is not a prank. I'll verify my identity when you call. The two women stared at each other in stunned silence. Then, almost simultaneously, they both began to cry. Not tears of sadness, but tears of overwhelming hope and disbelief. Should I call right now? Sarah asked, wiping her eyes. Wait, Rose said, reaching for Sarah's hand. Before you call, I need to tell you something. Last night, I dreamed about your grandfather. He was young again, wearing that blue shirt he wore on our first date, and he was smiling at me. He said, Rose, honey, it's time to dance one more time. I think he's watching over us. With shaking fingers, Sarah dialed the number. Amanda Rodriguez answered on the second ring. Sarah? Thank you so much for calling. I want you to know that Mr. Brooks was deeply moved by Rose's story. He spent most of yesterday evening reading all the messages and watching the videos that people have been posting. Videos? Sarah asked, confused. Oh, you haven't seen them? Hundreds of people have been posting videos of themselves singing the dance and dedicating them to Rose. Country music fans, other elderly couples, even some well-known musicians have joined in. It's become a movement. Amanda continued, Mr. Brooks has a concert in Atlanta tonight, but he wants to arrange something for Rose. He's wondering if she would be well enough to receive visitors tomorrow afternoon. Sarah looked at her grandmother, who was listening intently to every word. Rose nodded vigorously, her eyes bright with excitement. Yes, absolutely. She's doing remarkably well, actually. The anticipation seems to have given her energy. Wonderful. We'll be in touch with more details soon. And Sarah, Mr. Brooks wanted me to tell you that what you've done for your grandmother, the love, the determination, the way you've brought people together, it's exactly what country music is supposed to be about. Family, love, and never giving up on the people who matter most. After ending the call, Sarah and Rose sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Then Rose began to laugh, a joyful sound that filled the room with warmth. Sarah Mitchell, what have you done? Rose asked, still laughing. I think we're about to find out, Grandma. Within an hour of the call, the hospital was buzzing with activity. Dr. Peterson came by to check on Rose and seemed amazed by her improved condition. I've never seen anything quite like this, he told Sarah privately. Rose's vitals are the best they've been since she was admitted. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. The hospital's public relations director, Linda Stevens, knocked on the door around 10 a.m. She was a professional woman in her 40s who handled media relations for the hospital system. I hope I'm not intruding, Linda said, but we've had 17 different media outlets call this morning asking about Rose's story. We want to respect your family's privacy, but we also want to make sure that if Rose wants to share her story, she has support in doing it properly. Rose, who had been listening to the conversation from her bed, spoke up clearly. Linda, I've been quiet and private my whole life. But if my story can bring a little joy to other people, or maybe inspire other families to pursue their dreams, then I think it's worth sharing. Linda smiled warmly. That's a beautiful sentiment, Rose. If you're comfortable with it, I'd like to arrange for one television interview this afternoon. We can control the environment, make sure it's not overwhelming, and you can stop anytime you want. By lunchtime, news vans were parked outside the hospital, and Sarah's phone was ringing constantly. The Nashville Scene had published their article titled The Last Dance: How One Woman's Dream United Music City. The story was being picked up by national outlets. But the most touching development was happening right in the hospice ward. Inspired by Rose's story, families were opening up about their own loved ones' final wishes. The ward that had once been characterized by quiet sadness was now filled with conversations about dreams, music, and the importance of pursuing what matters most. Elizabeth Henderson, Robert's wife, had worked with the nursing staff to organize an impromptu sing-along in the ward's common area. Patients who were able to join were wheeled in, families gathered around, and together they sang old standards and country classics. This is what you've started, Dr. Peterson told Rose as they watched the scene from her doorway. You've reminded everyone that life should be celebrated, even in its final chapters. The television interview that afternoon was conducted by Jessica Chen, a reporter from WSMV known for her compassionate human interest stories. She set up in Rose's room with minimal equipment and crew, keeping the atmosphere as comfortable as possible. Rose, Jessica began. Your story has touched thousands of people in just a few days. What do you want people to know about your life and your last wish? Rose, wearing a soft pink sweater that Sarah had brought from home and with her silver hair styled by a volunteer beautician, looked directly into the camera with clear, bright eyes. "I want people to know that love is the only thing that really matters," Rose said. "I've been married to my William for 65 years before the Lord called him home. And every single day of that marriage was made better by music. When we were young and poor, we'd dance in our tiny kitchen to the radio. When we were raising our children, we'd sing together while we worked. When he was sick, I'd hum his favorite songs to help him sleep." She paused, gathering her thoughts, then continued. "Garth Brooks' music, especially the dance, has been the soundtrack to our love story. It's a song about taking chances, about believing that the joy is worth the pain, that loving someone completely is worth the heartbreak of eventually losing them. That's what I want people to understand. Don't be afraid to love completely. Don't be afraid to dream big. And don't be afraid to ask for what your heart truly wants." Jessica wiped away a tear before asking, "What will you do if you get to meet Garth Brooks tomorrow?" Rose smiled, and for a moment, she looked decades younger. "I'm going to sing my heart out. I'm going to thank him for all the joy his music has brought to my life. And I'm going to tell him that somewhere, my William is listening too. Probably with the biggest smile you've ever seen." The interview aired that evening on the 6 o'clock news and was simultaneously broadcast on the station's Facebook Live feed. Within hours, it had been viewed over 100,000 times and shared across multiple social media platforms. As Sarah settled in for another night in the hospital chair, she noticed that Rose seemed more peaceful than she had in weeks. The excitement and anticipation had indeed given her energy. But more than that, the outpouring of love and support from strangers had reminded her that her life had meaning and impact. "Sarah," Rose said quietly, as the hospital settled into its nighttime rhythm, "whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that you've already given me the greatest gift possible. You've shown me that love doesn't end when someone dies. It multiplies and spreads and touches people I'll never even meet. Grandma, you taught me that love. Everything I know about determination, about fighting for what matters, about never giving up on family, I learned that from watching you." Rose reached for Sarah's hand. "Promise me something. After I'm gone, I want you to remember this week. I want you to remember that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they love deeply enough. And I want you to keep singing, keep dancing, and keep believing in miracles. I promise, Grandma." As they both drifted toward sleep, neither could have imagined what Garth Brooks had spent his evening doing. After his concert in Atlanta, instead of heading back to his hotel, he had driven his tour bus directly toward Nashville, calling his band and crew with a plan that would require all night to set up. Tomorrow wouldn't just be a meeting between a country music superstar and a dying fan. Tomorrow would be something that none of them would ever forget. The miracle was about to begin. The morning sun painted Nashville in shades of gold and amber as October 16th dawned crisp and clear. Sarah woke before her grandmother for the first time in weeks, her nervous energy making sleep impossible. Today was the day that had seemed like an impossible dream just 4 days ago. Rose stirred as Sarah quietly moved around the room, preparing for what would undoubtedly be the most extraordinary day of both their lives. "Good morning, my dear," Rose said, her voice stronger than it had been in months. "I've been awake for a while, just thinking about everything that's led us to this moment. How are you feeling, Grandma? Are you nervous?" Rose considered the question carefully. "I'm not nervous, exactly. I'm expectant, like the feeling you get right before Christmas morning when you're a child." There's something magical in the air. Doctor! Peterson arrived for his morning rounds earlier than usual, clearly as excited as everyone else about the day's events. Rose's vital signs continued to show improvement, something he noted with professional amazement. "Rose, I've been practicing medicine for 25 years, Dr. Peterson said, and I've never seen anything quite like this. Your body is responding to this joy, this anticipation, in ways that frankly surprise me. Whatever happens today, I want you to know that you've already experienced something medically remarkable." Amanda Rodriguez called at 9 a.m. with final details. "Sarah, Mr. Brooks will arrive around 2 p.m. He's asked for privacy during his visit. So we've worked with the hospital to clear the hallway and limit access to essential staff only. He also wanted me to ask, is there anything specific Rose would like? Any particular songs or requests?" Sarah looked at her grandmother, who had been listening to every word. Rose thought for a moment, then said, "Tell him that the dance would mean everything to me, but I'd also love to hear Unanswered Prayers. That song got me through some difficult times when William was sick." As the morning progressed, the atmosphere in the hospital became increasingly electric. Word had somehow leaked despite efforts to keep Garth Brooks' visit private, and the staff was buzzing with excitement. Nurses found reasons to walk past Rose's room, and several came by to wish her well. Linda Stevens, the public relations director, stopped by around noon with some surprising news. "Rose, I hope you don't mind, but we've received requests from several other families in the hospice ward. They've heard about what's happening today, and some of them have asked if their loved ones might be able to listen from the hallway or nearby rooms. Of course, if you want this to be completely private, we'll respect that." Rose's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of joy. "Linda, my whole life I've believed that happiness should be shared, never hoarded. If other families can find some comfort or joy from today, then absolutely, they're welcome to listen." Around 1 p.m., Sarah noticed increased security activity in the hallways and knew that Garth Brooks' team was arriving. Her heart began racing with anticipation and nervousness. This was really happening. At 1:45 p.m., Amanda Rodriguez appeared at the door with a warm smile. "Rose, Mr. Brooks is here. Are you ready?" Rose smoothed her hair and adjusted the soft blue dress that Sarah had brought from home, the same shade of blue that William had been wearing the night they first danced together. "I've been ready for this moment my entire life." What happened next would be talked about in the halls of Mercy General Hospital for years to come. Garth Brooks entered room 247 not as a superstar, but as a man deeply moved by a love story that had touched his heart. He was wearing jeans, a simple black t-shirt, and his signature cowboy hat. In his hands, he carried an acoustic guitar. "Rose," he said simply, his voice gentle and warm, "it's an honor to meet you." Rose looked at him for a long moment, taking in the reality that her dream was actually coming true. Then she smiled, the radiant smile that had captivated William Thompson 70 years ago. "Garth Brooks," she said, "I can't believe you're really here." "I couldn't not be here," Garth replied, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "Your story, your love for William, the way Sarah fought to make your dream come true, it reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. It's about connection, about the way a song can carry us through life's biggest moments." He looked around the room, taking in the photographs of Rose and William that Sarah had brought from home, the cards and flowers from well-wishers, and the obvious love between grandmother and granddaughter. "Now," Garth said, tuning his guitar, "I understand there's a particular song you'd like to hear." "The dance," Rose whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Garth began to play the opening chords, and immediately Rose's eyes closed, as if she were being transported back through decades of memories. But instead of singing alone, Garth stopped after the first few measures. "Rose, I'm told you know this song better than just about anyone. Would you sing it with me?" For a moment, Rose looked uncertain. "Oh, I don't know if my voice—" "Your voice is exactly what this song needs," Garth said gently. "Music isn't about perfection. It's about truth, about love, about the stories we carry in our hearts." And so, in room 247 of Mercy General Hospital, magic happened. Rose Thompson, 92 years old, and facing the end of her earthly journey, found her voice again. As Garth Brooks played the guitar, she began to sing The Dance, with a clarity and emotion that filled not just the room, but seemed to resonate through the entire hospital wing. Looking back on the memory of the dance we shared beneath the stars above, her voice, though aged, carried the weight of 7 decades of love, loss, joy, and memories. Garth harmonized with her, his famous voice blending perfectly with hers, creating something that was more than music. It was a celebration of a life fully lived. Sarah stood in the corner, tears streaming down her face, recording everything on her phone. But she wasn't the only one listening. True to Rose's wishes, other families had gathered in the hallway. Through the slightly open door, she could see Robert Henderson with tears in his eyes. Several nurses had stopped their rounds to listen, and other patients who were able had been wheeled closer. When they finished the dance, the silence that followed was profound and sacred. Then, from the hallway, came the sound of gentle applause. Not the thunderous applause of a concert venue, but the respectful, loving appreciation of people who had just witnessed something truly special. "That was beautiful, Rose," Garth said, his own voice thick with emotion. "William would be so proud." "He's here," Rose said with quiet certainty. "I can feel him. He's dancing with us." Garth nodded, understanding completely. "Would you like to sing another song? Maybe Unanswered Prayers?" For the next hour, room 247 became a private concert venue, where a country music legend and a dying woman shared songs, stories, and the kind of human connection that transcends fame and circumstance. They sang Unanswered Prayers, Friends in Low Places, and several other classics. Sometimes Garth sang alone, while Rose listened with her eyes closed, clearly lost in memories. Sometimes they sang together, their voices creating harmony that seemed to heal hearts throughout the hospital wing. But perhaps the most powerful moment came when Rose asked if she could tell Garth about William. "He wasn't a famous man," Rose began, settling back against her pillows. "He worked at the lumber mill for 43 years, came home every evening with sawdust in his hair and calluses on his hands. But Garth, he was the kind of man who would stop his truck to help a stranger change a tire. He taught our children that character matters more than money, that kindness is never wasted, and that love is something you choose to do, not just something you feel." Garth listened intently, his guitar resting across his lap. "When he got sick," Rose continued, "the doctors said he had maybe 6 months. But you know what? He lived for 2 more years. And I think it was because he wasn't ready to stop loving me. Every morning, even when he was so weak he could barely stand, he would find a way to tell me I was beautiful. Every evening, he'd ask me to put on some music so we could have our dance, even if it was just him holding my hand while I swayed beside his chair." She paused, gathering strength for the most important part of her story. "The night before he passed, he squeezed my hand and said, 'Rose, honey, I want you to keep dancing. I want you to keep believing in magic and music and love. And someday, when it's your time, I'll be waiting to dance with you again.' That's why your music has meant so much to me, Garth. Every time I hear the dance, I remember that love is worth every moment of joy, and every tear of sorrow. The room was completely silent when Rose finished speaking. Garth sat quietly for a long moment, then reached over and gently took Rose's hand. "Rose, I've sung for presidents and played for millions of people," he said softly. "But I want you to know that today, singing with you, hearing your story, this is one of the greatest honors of my life. You and William, your love story, that's what real country music is about. That's what real life is about." As the afternoon wore on, something unexpected began to happen. Other patients and families started gathering in the hallway, not to intrude, but to be part of something special. Elizabeth Henderson, Robert's wife, was wheeled down from her room. An elderly man named Frank Miller, who was also in hospice care, brought his harmonica and asked if he could play along to a song. What had started as one woman's last wish was becoming something larger, a celebration of life, love, and the power of music to bring people together in their most vulnerable moments. "You know what?" Garth said, looking around at the growing crowd in the hallway. "I think we need to make this official." He stood up and addressed everyone who had gathered. "Folks, I came here today to grant one special lady's wish. But I can see that Rose's wish has become something bigger. So if you'd like, let's have ourselves a real concert. Let's sing together, share some stories, and celebrate the kind of love and community that makes life meaningful." And so, the hospice ward of Mercy General Hospital was transformed into the most intimate, most heartfelt concert venue Garth Brooks had ever played. Patients in wheelchairs and hospital beds became his audience. Family members joined in on songs they knew. Nurses hummed along as they continued their caring work. Frank Miller played harmonica accompaniment to Amazing Grace. Elizabeth Henderson, despite her weakened state, sang a beautiful solo verse of How Great Thou Art in a voice that revealed her years as a music teacher. Other families shared favorite songs that had meaning in their own love stories. But throughout it all, Rose remained the centerpiece of the celebration. She sang when she felt strong enough, listened with joy when she needed to rest, and served as a reminder to everyone present that every life has value, every love story matters, and every person deserves to have their dreams honored and their voices heard. As the afternoon began to fade into evening, Garth knew it was time to leave. But before he went, he had one more surprise for Rose. "Rose, I want you to have this," he said, carefully placing his guitar beside her bed. "This is the guitar I wrote some of my biggest hits on. I want you to keep it, and I want you to know that every time I perform the dance from now on, I'm going to think of you and William and the beautiful love story you've shared with me today." Rose's eyes filled with tears as she ran her fingers gently across the guitar strings. "Garth, I can't accept something so precious." "Yes, you can," he insisted gently. "Because what you've given me today, the reminder of why music matters, why love matters, why every single person's story is important, that's worth more than any guitar." As Garth prepared to leave, he turned to Sarah. "You know what you did, don't you? You didn't just help your grandmother meet a famous singer. You reminded an entire community about the power of love, determination, and never giving up on the people who matter most. That's something special, Sarah. Don't ever forget that." Before walking out the door, Garth turned back to Rose one more time. "Mrs. Thompson, it's been an honor to be part of your dance. Give my regards to William when you see him." Rose smiled, her face radiant with joy and peace. "I will. And Garth, thank you for helping an old woman remember that dreams really can come true." As Garth Brooks left Mercy General Hospital that evening, he carried with him a story that would inspire him for the rest of his career. But he left behind something even more valuable. A room full of people who had been reminded that love is the most powerful force in the universe, that music can heal hearts across generations, and that sometimes the most beautiful miracles happen when we simply have the courage to ask for what our hearts truly desire. In room 247, Rose Thompson fell asleep that night holding Garth Brooks's guitar, surrounded by flowers and cards from well-wishers around the world, and filled with the absolute certainty that she had experienced something magical. Sarah sat beside her, knowing that whatever tomorrow brought, today had been perfect. The dance was far from over. 3 days after Garth Brooks's visit, something remarkable was happening at Mercy General Hospital. What had begun as one woman's last wish had transformed into something much larger and more meaningful than anyone could have imagined. Rose's room had become an unofficial gathering place for the entire hospice ward. Families who had never spoken to each other were now sharing stories, offering comfort, and finding strength in their shared experiences. The guitar that Garth had left had become a symbol of hope, with different visitors taking turns playing simple melodies for patients who wanted to hear music. Rose herself seemed to be thriving in ways that continued to amaze her medical team. Dr. Peterson had never seen anything quite like it in his decades of hospice care. "Sarah," he said during his morning rounds on October 19th, "I need to be honest with you about something. When your grandmother was admitted 3 weeks ago, we estimated she had perhaps a few days, maybe a week. The cancer had progressed significantly, and her body was shutting down. But something has changed." Sarah looked up from her laptop, where she had been responding to the hundreds of messages that continued to pour in from around the world. The story of Rose's last wish had been picked up by international media, and people from dozens of countries had sent videos, letters, and well wishes. "What are you saying, Dr. Peterson?" "I'm saying that your grandmother's condition has stabilized in a way that I can only attribute to the joy, purpose, and hope that this experience has given her. She's not cured, the cancer is still there, but her body is responding to this emotional and spiritual healing in profound ways." Rose, who had been dozing lightly, opened her eyes and smiled at the conversation. "Dr. Peterson, I think I know what's happening. I'm not ready to leave yet. There's still work to do." And indeed, there was work to do. In the days following Garth's visit, Rose had become an unofficial ambassador for the hospice ward. Local musicians had started volunteering their time to perform for patients. The story had inspired other hospitals around the country to start their own music therapy programs. A foundation was being established to help fulfill last wishes for hospice patients. But perhaps most importantly, Rose had started something she called Story Time. Every afternoon at 3 p.m., Rose would hold court in the ward's common area when she was strong enough, or from her room with the door open when she needed to rest. And she would invite other patients, families, and even staff members to share their stories. Not their medical stories, but their love stories, their dreams, their memories of joy and triumph. "Every person has a song inside them," Rose would say to begin each session. "Today, we're going to help each other remember the melodies of our lives." Elizabeth Henderson had shared the story of how she met her husband Robert at a church social in 1962, where she was playing piano, and he was too shy to ask her to dance until the last song of the evening. Frank Miller told about his late wife's laugh, which was so infectious that it could make an entire room full of people start giggling for no reason. Maria Santos, a newer patient, shared how she and her husband had raised 5 children while running a small restaurant, and how they had made every meal a celebration of family. Sarah documented many of these sessions on her phone with permission from the participants, and had started a blog called Songs of the Heart, Stories from Room 247. The blog was gaining thousands of readers daily, all drawn to these authentic stories of love, loss, hope, and human resilience. On October 22nd, exactly 1 week after Garth's visit, Rose woke with unusual energy and a sense of urgency. "Sarah," she said, "I need to ask you to do something for me, something important." "Anything, Grandma. What do you need?" Rose sat up in bed, her eyes bright and focused. "I want to make a video. Not for me, but for other people who might be going through what we've been going through. I want to tell them about love, about not being afraid to ask for dreams, and about how every single day is a gift." Sarah set up her phone to record, but Rose stopped her. "Not with a phone, dear. I want this to be something special. Can you ask Linda if the hospital has professional video equipment? And can you call that nice reporter, Jessica Chen? I think she might want to help us with this." Within hours, Jessica Chen and her crew were back at Mercy General. But this time, they weren't just covering a story. They were helping to create something that Rose hoped would inspire others. Rose had thought carefully about what she wanted to say. She was wearing the same blue dress she had worn for Garth's visit, and Sarah had arranged fresh flowers around the room. But more importantly, Rose had asked for several other people to be part of the video. Robert and Elizabeth Henderson, Frank Miller, Dr. Peterson, and some of the nursing staff who had become like family during her stay. "My name is Margaret Rose Thompson," she began, looking directly into the camera with the same clarity and strength she had shown during her first interview. "A week ago, my granddaughter Sarah did something that changed my life. She took my impossible dream and made it possible. But what I learned from that experience is something I want to share with anyone who might be listening." Rose paused, gathering her thoughts, then continued with growing passion in her voice. "I learned that dreams don't have expiration dates. I learned that love is the most powerful force in the universe. And when we act out of love, whether it's for a grandparent, a spouse, a friend, or even a stranger, we can literally move mountains. I learned that every person's story matters. Every person's dreams are valid. And we should never be afraid to ask for what our hearts truly desire." She gestured to the other people gathered around her. "But most importantly, I learned that miracles aren't just about getting what we want. They're about discovering what we need. I wanted to meet Garth Brooks and sing one song. What I got was so much more. I got to be part of a community. I got to see strangers become friends. I got to witness the incredible kindness that exists in people's hearts." Elizabeth Henderson, despite her own frail condition, spoke next. "Rose taught us that even in our darkest moments, there's still room for joy, still room for hope, still room for dreams." Dr. Peterson added, "In 25 years of hospice medicine, I've never seen anything like what Rose has created here. She's reminded us that healing isn't always about curing disease. Sometimes it's about healing hearts, healing relationships, and healing the human spirit." Frank Miller, his voice shaky but determined, said, "Rose showed us that it's never too late to believe in magic." Rose concluded the video with words that would be shared millions of times across social media platforms around the world. If you're watching this, and you have someone you love, don't wait to tell them. Don't wait to pursue your dreams together. Don't wait to sing, to dance, to laugh, to hold each other close. Life is not a dress rehearsal. This is it. This is your one beautiful chance to love completely and dream boldly." She paused, her voice growing softer but more intense. "And if you're watching this, and you've lost someone you love, I want you to know that love doesn't end when someone dies. Love is eternal. Love continues. Love finds new ways to express itself through the people who carry it forward." Rose looked directly into the camera one final time. "My William is gone, But our love story continues through Sarah, through our family, through everyone who has been touched by this experience. That's the real miracle. Not that I got to meet a famous singer, but that love never really ends. It just finds new ways to dance. When the video was complete, Jessica Chen wiped away tears and said, "Rose, this is going to touch millions of people. Are you prepared for that kind of response?" Rose smiled peacefully. "Honey, I'm a 92-year-old woman in hospice care who just sang with Garth Brooks and started a movement about love and dreams. I think I'm prepared for just about anything now." The video was broadcast that evening on WSMV and simultaneously released on all their digital platforms. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed over 1 million times. Within a week, it had reached 10 million views and had been translated into 17 languages. But the real impact wasn't measured in numbers. It was measured in the thousands of people who reached out to share their own stories. Elderly couples sent videos of themselves dancing to The Dance. Adult children posted about pursuing long-delayed dreams with aging parents. Hospice workers from around the world shared how Rose's story had changed their approach to patient care. A movement had been born, and at its center was a 92-year-old woman who had simply wanted to sing one song with her musical hero. On November 1st, 2 weeks after the video's release, Rose experienced a slight decline in her condition. Not dramatic, but noticeable. She slept more, spoke less, and seemed to be gently preparing for the next phase of her journey. Sarah never left her side, and the hospital staff had become so attached to Rose that they arranged their schedules to spend time with her whenever possible. The room was constantly filled with flowers, cards, and small gifts from people around the world who had been touched by her story. On the evening of November 3rd, as autumn rain gently tapped against the hospital windows, Rose asked Sarah to play The Dance one more time. "I want to hear it the way Garth and I sang it," she said softly. Sarah found the recording she had made on her phone during that magical afternoon and played it through the small Bluetooth speaker that someone had donated to Rose's room. As the music filled the space, Rose closed her eyes and began to move her hands as if she were dancing. "Can you see him, Grandma?" Sarah asked gently. "Oh, yes," Rose whispered, her voice filled with wonder and joy. "He's here. He's been waiting for me. And he looks just like he did when we were young. He's wearing that blue shirt, and he's smiling, and he's holding out his hand for me to dance." Rose opened her eyes one more time and looked at Sarah with absolute clarity. "Thank you, my darling girl. Thank you for giving me the most beautiful ending to my story. Thank you for showing me that love really can move mountains. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, Sarah. Keep dancing. Keep believing. Keep sharing the story." Margaret Rose Thompson passed peacefully in her sleep early in the morning of November 4th, with Sarah holding her hand and the gentle strains of country music playing softly in the background. She died as she had lived, surrounded by love, filled with grace, and believing in the power of dreams. Her funeral 3 days later was unlike anything Nashville had ever seen. Hundreds of people who had never met Rose but had been touched by her story came to pay their respects. Garth Brooks attended and sang The Dance as a tribute, his voice breaking with emotion as he dedicated the song to Rose and William, who reminded us all what love looks like. But perhaps the most fitting tribute came from the Mercy General Hospital Hospice Ward, which was officially renamed the Rose Thompson Center for Compassionate Care. A plaque in the lobby reads, "In memory of Rose Thompson, who taught us that dreams have no expiration date, love has no boundaries, and every person's story deserves to be heard and honored." Sarah continued Rose's legacy by establishing the Last Dance Foundation, which works to fulfill final wishes for hospice patients around the world. The Foundation's motto, taken directly from Rose's words, reads, "Love is eternal. Love continues. Love finds new ways to dance." Every year on November 4th, people around the world share videos of themselves dancing to The Dance and post them with the hashtag #OnRosesEternalDance. It has become a global celebration of love, dreams, and the belief that even in our darkest moments, there is still room for magic. In Nashville, in a small cemetery where autumn leaves dance in the wind, two headstones sit side by side. One bears the name William Thompson, the other Margaret Rose Thompson. Between them, someone has placed a small guitar, a replica of the one Garth Brooks gave to Rose, and fresh flowers that are replaced weekly by visitors who never knew them in life but were touched by their love story. The inscription on Rose's headstone, chosen by Sarah, reads simply, "She believed in dreams. She lived for love. And she never stopped dancing." And somewhere, in the space between earth and heaven, between memory and eternity, Rose and William Thompson continue their dance. A dance that began at a county fair in 1953 and will continue forever, inspiring others to believe in the power of love, the importance of dreams, and the truth that some songs never end. They just find new voices to carry them forward. One generation at a time, one heart at a time, one dance at a time. The music plays on.